To Venezuela now, where a month after the disputed election, both sides have taken to the streets of the capital, Caracas. In front of a crowd of supporters, Nicolas Maduro claimed victory again, calling his opponents cowards. But Maduro has also called on opposition leaders to be arrested, forcing them into hiding, while hundreds of dissenters have reportedly already been detained. But opposition leader Maria Corina Machado did emerge to hold her own counter-protests, encouraging supporters to continue fighting what she called the stolen election. The U.S., the European Union, and several Latin American countries say the results are fraudulent and that opposition leader Edmundo González is the real winner. DW's Oscar Schlenka has been following all of this in Caracas, in the Venezuelan capital. Oscar, 1 month after the election, what's the situation in the country?
Well, it has been a very eventful month here in Venezuela, starting with the results given by the Electoral Council and the protests that ensued. That has triggered Maduro's government to unleash a series of arrests and persecution like none other we have seen in the past. Many young people are behind bars, their families unable to see or speak with them. And in the midst of this, people are still responding to Maria Corina Machado to take to the streets peacefully to protest what they claim is the fraud of the century.
The opposition has vowed to keep fighting. How are they keeping up the pressure?
Well, the fact that the opposition leaders are still in Venezuela, that they haven't left despite the brutal persecution, is a testament to the pressure and conviction they have. The democratic international community has also stepped up to defend the opposition, and that translates into pressure. What the opposition seeks now is support to pressure the regime in sitting down and negotiating, but above all to recognize that Edmundo González Urrutia won the elections despite all the obstacles put forth by the regime, and they have the tallies to prove it.
Edmundo González has been summoned to testify by the country's general prosecutor. What's that all about?
Well, this is the third citation that Edmundo González receives. After this, an arrest could be issued against him. Maria Corina Machado said today that his home could be seized in the next hours. So there is an ongoing persecution of the opposition people that are surrounding Maria Corina. We've seen it also with arrests this past week with her close allies, and we saw it yesterday after her protest. One of her closest allies was also detained and is in custody of Nicolas Maduro's regime.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is accusing the Venezuelan regime of sowing terror as a tool to silence its citizens. You mentioned the arrests. What more can you tell us about the uptick in human rights violations in the aftermath of the election?
Well, Maduro's administration is charging them with terrorism, treason, and other crimes. Many of them are young people, and at least 100 detainees are minors. The government claims they were trained in Chile and the U.S. to commit violent crimes. But we are seeing that many of these people were arrested at their home after appearing on social media videos supporting the opposition. There are also at least 10 journalists arrested as well. Also, many more have been targeted for being electoral witnesses the day of the elections, and others are just active political parties that support the opposition. Now, human rights activists here have claimed that this has been the most brutal and massive toll of arbitrary arrests in Venezuelan history. And now, before this, there were ongoing international investigations on crimes against humanity in Venezuela, and what we're seeing now is that the files just keeps on growing.
This is being watched with concern not only inside the country, but of course also by the international community. And there has been pressure on the regime. The EU just today said it would not recognize Maduro's legitimacy. Does that affect him at all?
Well, this depends on which country says what thing. For rhetoric, it's always useful having international enemies to blame for the government's shortcomings. But being isolated in the region is also uncomfortable for Nicolas Maduro. And we've seen that that's why Colombia and Brazil are crucial in their positions, because Maduro had two big allies that are now giving him the cold shoulder in the midst of increasing Venezuelan migration due to the lack of freedoms and opportunities expected from 6 more years of Maduro in office.
This week, Maduro reshuffled his cabinet. What kind of term does that foreshadow the new composition of his cabinet?
Well, we saw the same faces in different positions, but one of the most important ones is Diosdado Cabello as the Minister of Peace and Justice, because he's one of the most radical pieces in the chessboard of personalities in Maduro's regime. So we might see an increase in repression and persecution against opposition leaders, and we may see freedoms not having guarantees for them.
Many Venezuelans had vowed to leave the country if Maduro won another term. And I want to know from you briefly, has the exodus started yet, and how are neighboring countries bracing?
Yes, we are registering an increase in migration, and some mayors and governors in bordering Colombia have asked their government to increase public policies to receive this increase, and expected more migrants coming into the country, especially Colombia, which is the one that receives most Venezuelans at this point.
Oscar Schlenka in Caracas, many thanks.